Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Kay and Lee TV. It's me, Kay and Lee. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. How's it going? Make sure you follow, subscribe, like, comment. If you're returning, welcome back, guys. Leave a heart in the comments. I am so excited because today we're going to get serious. I cannot wait. I have been very eager to talk about Queen Charlotte or Bridgerton story. I will tell you, I did try to record my reaction, but it was so insane trying to get it approved. And I'm still learning how to do these things. So you're going to have to give me a minute to learn how to do reactions without getting blocked and all of that nonsense. And, but I did put it on my Patreon. So if you want to view on my Patreon, it's patreon.com/KNLee. And yes, I am Kay and Lee. I'm an author. I write fantasy, epic fantasy, paranormal romance, dystopian, sci-fi, contemporary romance. I write so many things. So I am really eager to talk to you guys about Queen Charlotte from an author's perspective and give you my personal opinion and thoughts. So Queen Charlotte is a prequel spinoff of Bridgerton, the widely popular series on Netflix that is delicious, delectable, loved it. So when I saw the trailer for Queen Charlotte, I was like, yes, I will be there day one, and I was. And I was really excited because I loved Queen Charlotte in the Bridgerton story, and I knew of her story historically before the show. So I was like, very cool, because first, I actually lived in Charlotte for most of my life, and it was really cool because Charlotte, North Carolina is named after her. So Queen Charlotte is a real, true historical figure. She is Queen Sophia Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz from Germany, and she was married to King George, as you will see in the show. However, the show, as it states in the beginning, it is not a history lesson. It is fiction inspired by fact. So let's get into it. But first, this video is sponsored by Audible. I love Audible. My books are on Audible. You can get the Dragonborn Saga on Audible. It's incredible. Audible is an app that you can take with you anywhere. You can work out, you can eat, you can shop, you can drive, you can listen to it before bed, and you can learn things. You can have books read to you. It's fantastic. Audible first-time users get the first 30 days for free, and you can find my code in the description box below to get even more perks. So give Audible a shot. It's pretty incredible. It's revolutionary. It's taking learning, education, podcasts, books to a whole new level. You have no excuse on learning that thing you wanted to learn or reading that book you wanted to read. And yeah, it has incredible actors narrating these books as well. I know mine, Rise of the Flame, one of my favorites, is narrated by a really cool actor, dialect master, and you'll definitely love it. But now it's time to get into the review. All right, Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story. First and foremost, I'm going to give you this because it was not given to me, but a trigger warning. I have a few triggers, and my triggers are they're not that vast, but one of my big triggers is harm done to people with mental illness, and that does occur in this story. So I want to give you guys that trigger warning. If you've seen it and you know what I'm talking about, if you haven't seen it, just know that going into it, it really affected me on a physical level, where I almost abandoned the series. I almost gave up. Like, that's how intense it was for me. Like, I don't want to see you harm children or elderly people who can't help themselves, mental ill people. Like, it was a lot for me. So trigger warning. But aside from that, as a whole, I really enjoyed the series. I enjoyed it so much that when I wanted to give up and abandon it, I was brought back to it because I knew it had to pay off somehow. It had to come full circle. There had to be justice. I have a strong justice reflex, and if I sense injustice, I will give up on a show or a movie. But I was like, my injustice trigger, I was like, it shall be sated. We shall have justice. And if there wasn't justice at the end, I would probably review this differently. But once again, this is fiction. I do not believe these things actually happened in real life. If they did, I feel terrible for King George. But the show was great. It was well acted. The performances were incredible. Milchrist, the actor who played King George, he was my favorite. He was my favorite actor by far in this series, and this is his breakout role, and he knocked it out of the park. I've watched interviews with him speaking about how nervous he was. He literally came to audition with for a chemistry audition with India, the actress who played Queen Charlotte, and he literally saw his competition leave, and he was like, he was so incredibly attractive, looked like Prince Charming. He didn't think he would get it, but he did, and I see why. It's because this guy did an amazing job. First and foremost, like the physical toll this role must have taken on him was a lot. Like, I don't know if I'm sure he had to be prepped for what he would have to endure in this role. Like, this guy had to endure like some really heavy scenes, and he did it like a master. Like, he did go to school for this, and the school he went to, top notch. But yeah, the characters were incredible. Everyone did their job well. There were no weak links. Everyone did incredible in this series. The woman who did Queen Charlotte, 21 years old, acting like, like she's been doing it. She has been doing it for all of her life, apparently. She's been doing it since she was a child, but she did a great job. They made her look just like the actress who played older Queen Charlotte. They gave her the moles and everything. She's got the hair. It was great. I do find it funny that she is from Germany, but they still kept up with the British accent. Cool. She's a British actress, but I do think that's kind of funny because just for, authenticity in the story, it would have made more sense for her to have a German accent, but that is literally grasping at straws because she was great. Even Brimsley, older Brimsley, younger Brimsley, the footman. Is he her footman or valet? I'm not sure what he's called, what his role title is, but the person who follows her around all the time was great. Both valets were great, the king's and hers. They had an on-screen romance, which was also, it was kind of sweet. It was kind of sweet, especially when you see later in the series how much these people had to give up to have these roles, to serve the crown, like how much they'd had to sacrifice, like he had to sacrifice a family and a life of his own to serve the queen. It's set in the time where she first marries King George at 17 years old. She is betrothed by her brother, and I'm assuming her father, which they didn't show. They may have shown him in the very first episode striking a deal and signing the documents, but I think it was her brother, which is very interesting because he was a prince. He wasn't king yet. So I wonder what that means if there was another, but he is set to be king. And so that's very interesting. I didn't really get as much clarity on that, but the story is set at the time where she is betrothed. And the next thing you know, she's been shipped off to England with nothing more than knowing she's marrying the king. She knows literally nothing about him because most of his subjects know little about him. He is a mystery. He is rarely seen. He is very much a reclusive person, and you can see his mother, played by the same actress as Catelyn Stark from Game of Thrones, pretty much runs in his stead. She pretty much just says that his word, her word is his word, and that's pretty much accepted up until a point. Yeah, she's not into it. She doesn't know who this is. She doesn't know if he's going to be a beast or a troll. And her brother tries to give her encouragement and let her know that literally, like, this is a huge thing for both of their countries, and it's kind of a done deal. However, she tries to escape, and the person who comes and sees her try to escape is none other than King George himself. That scene where she discovers that I'm marrying this handsome fella that stumbled upon me in the garden while I tried to escape was electric. You can feel the instant attraction. They did a really great job portraying the attraction between these two. He is incredibly charming. She is incredibly charmed. He finds her attractive. She finds him attractive. And when they touch hands, the sparks go boom like firecrackers. I felt it. They felt it. And next thing you know, she's swept up. She's fully entranced. She's smiling. They're giggling. They're touching. They get married. They kiss. They dance. And then he takes her to the palace. And then all things fade. It gets quiet. It gets awkward. It gets dark very quickly because in a snap of a finger, I know how triggered we are by snaps after Thanos. It all fades. He's like, this is your home. I'm going back to a whole nother palace. Goodbye. This was fun. Adieu. And she's like, what is going on? She's like, you mean you're not going to stay with me? You're just going to leave me here? He's like, yeah. Like it's not a thing. And she's just like, clearly confused as anyone would be. It's their wedding night. She doesn't know what's supposed to happen on this night as a sheltered feminine in this era, but she knows it's not this. And he does nothing to soothe her anxieties. He literally yells at her and commands her, and that immediately makes her walls go up tenfold. She takes steps back and she's like, as you wish, Your Highness. And you can see he instantly regrets it, but the damage is done. But you can also sense there's more under the surface. So he leaves and she goes to her room, and then we get to see a whole personification of her loneliness. Day in and day out, she gets stressed. She eats alone. She has no one to talk to aside from Brimsley. She cannot take in any visitors because she's in her honeymoon period. It's forbidden. So we get to see early on just how lonely this young girl is destined to be. But throughout the season, we do have some payoff. There is richness to the romance, and it is well fought and well won. It is it's a great payoff. We get to see that a lot of his behaviors are due to him wanting to protect her because he does have a mental illness. Historically, it's thought to be a blood disorder in the royal line, but modern times, they believe it's bipolar disorder where he goes through mania. You have a period of grandiosity, and then you have a calming down period where you're more yourself, you're more grounded, and he kind of fluctuates between these two. So in the series, he tells her, you're only going to get half a man. But the beautiful thing throughout all of their adversity, she accepts that because they do fall in love. So the characterization between the two main characters is great. But then we also have more characters. We have Lady Danbury, older version and younger version. Both are incredible. We get a lot more of the younger Lady Danbury, which is great. She had a very tumultuous marriage to an older gentleman who basically ruled her life. And I'm not going to give too much spoilers about her scenario, but she has some things that occur in her life that shape her. And we get to see how her relationship with Queen Charlotte originated, which was beautifully done. She is one of her ladies in waiting. However, I always thought the ladies in waiting spent more time on the castle grounds, but she goes back to her own home. And you know what I did love about this? And I love these very meticulously done, subtle battles. And you see it in different films, and it's done so well. One of the best is Memoirs of a Geisha, where Sayori's the woman who basically owns Sayori has a conversation with Michelle Yao, who comes to take Sayori and train her into become a geisha. And the negotiation period, the talk over tea, where they're both having banter and they're both throwing blows, but in the most the most clever, crafty, low-key, polite ways. Like Lady Danbury has this with the king's mother, the Dowager Princess, as I mentioned, played by the woman who played Catelyn Stark. I need to learn her real name. They have this battle over tea, where it's basically, if you want my help, you're going to have to help me. And it was well done, and lots of character development in these moments. You get to see how Lady Danbury strengthened her skin, how she got that tough skin, because she does have a moment where it cracks and the queen is like, oh no, you're supposed to be my worthy adversary. I don't like you, but I do love our sparring matches over tea. So pull it in, get it together, and let's start over. And you can see her pull it in visibly because she's a great actress. And she reasserts herself, wipes her tears, and she's like, what about my title? If you want information, let's talk about my title. Because in this story, we're kind of having this great experiment where the crown bestows titles upon people of color who would have normally have not have been given these titles and land and whatnot. And it's unprecedented. Will this stick? Will this last? Does it die when the original person bestowed the title dies? So that's also another major plot point. But yeah, that was very well done. We also have Lady Bridgerton, who is the main character from the first season's mother, the mother of all of those children that are going to get married in the rest of the series. We have her as a child, young teen, or an older, teenager, and as an adult with Lady Danbury. And we get to see another subplot play out with her father and Lady Danbury, who had an extramarital affair. So that was very interesting. I'm not a fan of infidelity, so that's also a trigger warning. So we get to see Lady Danbury and Lady Bridgerton and their relationship, how it began when Lady Bridgerton was a young girl before she got married, before she even came out in her first season. And we get to see that Lady Danbury actually had an extramarital affair with her father. Although Lady Danbury was widowed, the father was still married. So that's another trigger warning of infidelity. So that was interesting to see. And it definitely added layers to Lady Danbury as well. So apparently Queen Charlotte had 15 children, and we get to see them, and we get to see how much pressure is on them to produce an heir. Because out of all of them, they have hundreds of illegitimate children and none that can have the crown passed down to them. So that is the main source of tension for older Queen Charlotte. She needs to produce an heir. So that was pretty interesting to see all of her children. We didn't get too much into them. I actually was hoping we get to see a little bit of their romances, because she did ultimately marry off two of the princes toward the end. They're both lovely. Like, I would have loved to got a little bit of romance from them too, but I understand that this was a limited series. I believe it's only 6 episodes, so we couldn't get too deep into their storylines. It couldn't have been done well within the short amount of time. So I guess it's better leaving it off, because we're here for Queen Charlotte, and we did get to see the passion and the angst, and they almost had an enemies to lovers scenario, which is my favorite trope. They literally at one time hated each other because she overheard him speaking to his mother about how it was kind of a misunderstanding. You know how those go. That's how most of these things happen. It's a misunderstanding. You just talk about it. It could be resolved. She kind of overheard him speaking and took it as he didn't really care about her. So her walls came up again. They would come together on even days to try for a baby, but it was so passionate. It was so hot and it was so well done. And I really loved it. I really loved how assertive he was and how even though she's like, I hate you, she's like, get over here. And the moment they touch, you can tell they love each other, but they're just acting like children because they are. Not literal children, that'd be weird. But mentally they hadn't learned how to deal with this is their first relationship. They haven't learned how to deal with confrontation and things of this nature. So this is their first time kind of dealing with this thing. And you can see her mature. You can see her come to her senses and be like, I understand even what you said to your mother. I understand like how heavy the crown is. Like that's kind of the thing for royals, is you can see that it's quite heavy. There's a lot that goes into it, and you are no longer yourself. You are no longer free to your own desires and wishes, especially when you're in a monarchy as the British, where you have Parliament who kind of monitors you. You're not like King Henry, where you literally could do whatever you wanted. Henry the Fifth, the one that killed all of his wives, not all of them, but Henry Tudor. So yeah, she gets to see like, I get it. And they reconcile and they're good. But then we get to see his point of view of why he disappeared during her honeymoon. And this is what nearly lost me, is he was seeking treatment. Like he's been receiving treatment for almost all of his life. And they're pretty brutal. But there's a doctor who comes who claims that he can cure the king. And this guy's credentials are working at Bedlam. And Bedlam is widely known as an insane asylum. And we know what it was like for people in insane asylums and their treatment, how brutal and barbaric it was. And to be fair, he asks the doctor to do whatever he has to. But I don't think he knew it was result in literal torture. Sorry to say that word. That's a trigger word for me. And it may be for you, so I'm sorry. So we get to see that. Not fun. Broke me. I could not stop crying. I had to shut it off, and I was like, I don't know if I could do it. I even fast forwarded through a lot of it. It's like every time I saw that doctor, I couldn't watch it. So that was hard. But it did pay off, as I mentioned. She did discover what was happening, and she shut it down immediately, and he was never allowed to return. So that was sweet justice, but I was still very alarmed. It's like, did that harm him more mentally, having those things happen to him? And he does have his moments of mania, but she handles it well. She treats him with love. She grounds him. She gives him a touch, and he comes back to himself. And it was really lovely, and especially in the last episode where we get to see older Queen Charlotte with the older king and younger Queen Charlotte with the younger king kind of have the same scene play out in the different timelines, just showing how much love and devotion she has for him and how much he appreciates her and loves her, and she can bring him back to himself. But it's still quite hard. There isn't necessarily a happy ever after for any of them. And, that's typically needed in a romance. But again, this is fiction inspired by fact. She was still a glass princess, a doll in this castle who is kept, just at the whim of the king, just waiting. Is he going to live? It's what's going to happen. And it's very lonely for her. It's lonely for Brimsley. It's lonely for Lady Danbury, who didn't want to remarry. It's lonely for Lady Bridgerton, who lost her husband and is now feeling desire once again and having to deal with the guilt of that, of not honoring her husband. She wants to, but she also wants to live, and that's okay. And Lady Danbury helps her come to that conclusion. But for most of the people in this story, there is no happily ever after, and that's kind of hard. But it was still beautiful. It's still worth watching. From an author's perspective, it is hard to leave a reader without a happily ever after, but this is a show, and it did what it came to do. It gave us those gut-wrenching moments, those tears, that pain, that sorrow, that empathy for these characters, that love, that passion, that heat. It had those elements. So as a whole, it accomplished what it wanted to accomplish, and it gave us her backstory, which is really, really incredible because it gives us more an insight into the queen as we go further into the series about her motivations and her actions. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it. Even aside from my triggers, I would recommend you watching it. I think that from the storyteller perspective, very well told. I love alternating point of views. I do that. I love it. I love having Queen Charlotte's point of view in one timeline and King George's point of view in another timeline, and seeing those merge. Like, what was he going through while she was feeling this way, and what were his motivations? And I love seeing that come together full circle and see them come together and reconcile and share, be vulnerable with one another, and ultimately find that safe haven within one another. So that was lovely. And I would love to know your thoughts. What did you think? Were you triggered like me? Were there other things that triggered you? Because there was more in there that I think those are the worst triggers, though. I can't even think of anything. The infidelity and the torture were the main triggers for me. Much as I wanted Lady Danbury to have a lovely, romance, I would have hoped that it would have been something that wouldn't have broken her heart. So yeah, what were your thoughts? What did you think? Put them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Again, check out Audible. It's incredible. It's free for new users. Use my code and get yourself some audiobooks, some podcasts. And I would love to get a subscribe from you guys, a like, a share, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.